It's on.
Okay.
It's on now.
Terrific. All right, everyone. Well, welcome again to the next Technology Review Council meeting. I see a wonderful crowd, and we're here to see AIGO. And I have to say, earlier I was mentioning I'd seen the demonstration before. It is really quite a deal, and I think you'll love the video and the comparison with our current world of artificial intelligence and a little bit of the chatbot or the speech recognition perspective. But I will turn this over to Srini. I want to say we'll hold the questions to the end. We'll make sure we've got time to answer those questions. And if you'd like to put it in the chat box, please do so. I'll keep monitoring that. Srini, you are on. Thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely, no. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our story and our technology, and thanks to everyone for taking the time to join us today. So let me dive right in. So my name is Srini Pagadyala. I am the co-founder of AIGO.ai. What we have with AIGO is world's first and only intelligent cognitive assistant. What we mean by that is this. So if you look in the chatbot space, at the digital assistant space, there are 2,400 companies. All of these companies, on the enterprise side, you have IBM Watson, Nuance Communications, and many other companies. In the consumer market, you have Alexa, Siri, Cortana, and Google Assistant. So many of them. Between the two, you're looking at 2,400 companies. All of these companies, they suffer from the same limitations. They don't remember what you said 2 sentences back, much less 2 days back or 2 weeks back, unless they're pre-programmed to hear a particular utterance. They don't have any memory like you and I do. I'm learning something new about you, and you're learning something new about me, and we remember everything that was said, and whatever does not make sense, we ask additional questions. There is no such memory that exists with any of these chatbots. That's number one. Number two, they cannot learn any new information interactively from you. So if you tell Alexa, Siri, or any of the chatbots for that matter, you tell them our favorite fruit is papaya, and you ask them what their favorite fruit is, they cannot answer that. They're not designed to learn any new information interactively from you. They're trained at the factory. They come to you in read-only mode, and whatever they have preset or pre-programmed utterances, that's the only thing they can hear. That's the only thing they can learn. They cannot learn any new information from you. They don't understand context or complex sentences. As an example, you can try this right now with Siri. You can tell Siri, hey, Siri, don't tell me weather. Immediately it tells you weather. So the problem is a lot more inherent with all of these companies, because all of these 2,400 companies, they're using machine learning and deep learning technology to solve the problem of natural language interaction. Now, we have tremendous respect for the technology, but we've also concluded almost 15 years back, it is absolutely the wrong technology to use to solve the problem of natural language interaction. Let me give you an example. If I give you a number, pick any number, 5,460. You see, the value of that number does not change based on the context. Whether I think somebody needs to be unmuted.
Yeah, please mute your audio so that we can have a clean recording. I don't know where somebody is, but it's pretty doggone noisy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So if you pick a number, if I give you a number, 5,460 as an example, the value of that number does not change based on the context. Whether you're using that number as a quantity, as a rate, as a total, as a subtotal, the value is still intact, irrespective of the context. But if I give you a word, club, right, without really understanding the context, you would not know whether I'm talking about golf club, dance club, book club, tea club. There are many clubs available. So, it is almost unfair to expect this machine learning, deep learning technology, which is a sophisticated statistical pattern matching kind of technology, somehow to automatically understand hundreds of thousands of nuances that humans have developed over a period of hundreds of years with the language. Because language needs a lot more than just a pattern matching approach. But that is the technology that they are using to solve this problem. Not
Srini,
only that.
I'm sorry, I hate to disturb you. Maria, I think you're the one that needs to be muted. I apologize, but anyone who's got a phone, please mute that or mute yourself on the Zoom meeting. It's becoming quite annoying to have that noise in the background. Thank you.
So none of these technologies can reason with you or even manage an ongoing meaningful conversation. Therefore, they cannot hyper-personalize the experience for one user, much less doing this at scale. So these are inherent problems that exist in the marketplace. So AIGO elegantly bridges these gaps, these massive cognitive gaps that exist, while AIGO continues to provide hyper-personalized experience for each user, and we can do this at scale. So whether you have 10 users or 10 million users or 100 million users, each user gets their own AIGO. Each AIGO is hyper-personalized to that individual. So let me kind of talk about, when we say hyper-personalization, we are not talking about a pretend personalization where you and I get the same email, except mine says, dear Srini, or yours says, dear no, but the entire content is the same. That's a parameter-based personalization where they just change the last name, first name, or a date or something like that. That's not the personalization we are talking about. When we say hyper-personalization, what we are talking about is something that is specific to that individual user, their context, their needs, and their goals. That is what we are talking about. So each user have unique context and unique needs, unique goals, and we want to make sure we address them. And that is the personalization that we are talking about. And that is something only we can say this and we can do this. So at the end of the day, what we deliver for our customers is a highly intelligent, hyper-personalized conversational assistant at scale. For any enterprise, and we are open to doing this for any domain. So we are vertical agnostic and domain agnostic. So in other words, we can do this for the HR. We can also do this for sales. We can also do this for customer support. And each user, as they start using it, it gets more and more, hyper-personalized for that user. So just to kind of, compare and contrast capabilities of our technology with the state of the art, the leader is supposed to be Alexa with, over 100 million devices deployed in the market. So we wanted to compare that, and that's why we put together this comparison. And these are AIGO's capabilities, real capabilities, not a mock-up. As of 2 years back, we can do a lot more than what you're able to see in this demo. But two key things to point out in this demo is, number one, AIGO is a piece of software. So we don't need a device like Alexa for AIGO to work. AIGO can work with any existing software through talk or text, or we can also put it on any device, but we don't require a device. That's number one. Number two, the type of customers or the type of markets we are going after right now are mostly either B2B or B2B2C. So we are not going to consumer market at all right now. So we are focused 100% on enterprise market, and within the enterprise market, we either work with the enterprises or we work with their end customers. So they have 10 million customers or 20 million customers. We'll serve their customers through them. So those are the two types of use cases. Now here is Alexa trying to do some basic things.
All right, Alexa, add chips and guac, napkins, and 3 bottles of wine to John's birthday list.
I added chips, guac, napkins, 3 bottles of wine to your shopping list.
Actually, Alexa, remove the napkins from the list.
To clear your list or remove an item, visit the Alexa app.
Okay, then. Alexa, what do I have on John's birthday list?
You have 1 item on your shopping list. chips, guac, napkins, 3 bottles of wine.
You call all that one item? Oh, Alexa, remember that John's favorite cake is red velvet.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
You know, if you have been using Alexa, that's not a unique experience. That's the most common experience. So Alexa doesn't understand the difference between shopping list and birthday list. And you know, when you ask how many items are there in that list, it combines all of them into one.
Right.
And when you say, you know, John's favorite cake is red velvet, it just does not know, you know, what to do with it. It is a random but relevant information, relevant for the context. It still does not know, you know, what to do with it. Now, what we did is we put AIGO's brain into Alexa. So, you know, what we focus on, AIGO is 100% focused on contextual understanding to be able to correctly interpret what somebody is saying and to be able to respond to that request intelligently while it remembers the context and the whole bit. What we don't have is speech recognition. So the organic way to communicate with AIGO is text input and text output. But anytime customer has request for voice, we can integrate AIGO with any existing speech recognition system. So in this example, we put AIGO's brain into Alexa. So we're still using Alexa's speech recognition system. Speech recognition focuses on what words somebody is saying, not on the meaning, but then AIGO's brain kicks in and kind of makes sense of it and then responds to that. So here is AIGO addressing the same scenario.
All right, let's make this happen. AIGO.
Hi there. What's on your mind?
Let's add chips and guac, napkins, and 3 bottles of wine to John's birthday list.
Good morning, Sam. I don't know what guac is.
Oh, guac is the same thing as guacamole.
Okay, creating John's birthday list. Is that okay?
Yep.
I added chips and guacamole, napkins, and 3 bottles of wine to John's birthday list.
What was the food on that list again?
Chips and guacamole and 3 bottles of wine.
Actually, let's make that 5 bottles.
Sure. The list is now 5 bottles of wine, chips and guacamole and napkins.
Great, let's send it over to June. And ask her if there's anything I'm missing, please.
Sending John's birthday list to June via email.
Wait, always contact June by Skype.
Okay, sending the list to June via Skype.
Oh, remember that John's favorite cake is red velvet.
Got it.
Fantastic.
As you can see here, this is an entirely different experience. If AIGO doesn't understand something, what is guac? Guac is same as guacamole. AIGO learns that information interactively. AIGO remembers that and uses that contextually in all future conversations. And when you say, you know, what is the food, you know, what are the food items on that list? Now that requires the ability to reason. So that means AIGO needs to understand the concept of what a food is, what is not a food, and being able to, you know, be able to pick that those items that are, you know, in the food category. That's a reasoning ability. And when he says actually make it 5 bottles, what does that it mean? That it is coming from previous part of the conversation, that it is wine bottles. That's what we're talking about. AIGO is able to, you know, understand that, get that. And when you say something like, you know, always contact June by Skype, or John's favorite cake is red velvet. This is random but relevant information. AIGO learns that interactively, remembers that, and uses that in all future conversations contextually. So this is what we you know, this is what we mean when we say we have world's first and only intelligent cognitive assistant that basically can facilitate ongoing meaningful conversation with all of the cognitive elements that are critical for natural language interaction. Now, so you know, we talked a lot about natural language conversation. You know, what is also kind of well-known fact in the industry is this is the holy grail of artificial intelligence, which is where it needs to be contextual, it needs to be ongoing, and that means it requires cognition, and that translates to need to have memory, need to have ability to read, and need to have deeper understanding of what somebody is saying, of the context and the complex sentences, be able to learn interactively, contextually, and have that cumulative learning. So if you said something yesterday and if you said something again this morning, if we did additive, we need to be able to learn that, and that is the only way we can create that hyper personalization. And to the best of our knowledge, we are the only ones who are able to do this. As an example, just to kind of let you know how complex natural language is, which we take it for granted. If you use the word remind, right? Remind me to speak with Jane. That's the reminder. But when you say remind me, what did Jane say? That means tell me what did Jane say. And when you say remind Jane to talk to me, that's basically ask Jane, right? And when you use this kind of any of the sentences, the response that you get from chatbot is all they know is the moment you use the word remind, that means it's a reminder. No, it's not. Depending on the context, it changes. If I give you 3 sentences with just one word difference, which is John ate spaghetti with Mary, John ate spaghetti with meatballs, and John ate spaghetti with chopsticks. Well, Mary is a company, and meatballs is a food, and chopsticks is either tool that you use to eat food. Well, there's not a single chatbot on the planet that can make sense of these are simple sentences, unless it has the ability to read and behind the scenes. But AIGO, on the other hand, we are able to do that. These are very, very simple examples, but they're complex. If you I'll give you one more sentence. I read a book on a horse, and that means there are 2 different things. Were you sitting on a horse while reading a book, or were you reading a book about the horse? Again, there's not a single chatbot that can actually make sense of that. But you give that to AIGO. Now AIGO tries to understand the context, what was said before, what was said later, or it will ask you additional questions to disambiguate. These are all the mechanisms that are built in. Because if you say the same thing to a human, how would a human understand? It's not conclusive. They'll come back and they'll ask additional questions. That's exactly how AIGO responds, right? So this is the reason why we say, AIGO is the only chatbot with brain out there, right? So when you attend any of these big chatbot conferences, what they talk about is there are 5 levels of chatbot similar to autonomous vehicles. There's level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 and level 5. Level 1 assistants are more notification assistants. They let you know something happened. Hey, it's a yes or no or whatever it is. This triggered that it happened kind of thing. Those are the level 1 assistants. Level 2 and level 3 are relatively popular these days. These are FAQ assistants or even form filling assistants, like when you can order a pizza, you can book a travel, or you can book a hotel. These are all level 3 type chatbots. But what none of them talk about at these conferences is there is absolutely no path to go from level 3 to level 4. It's a huge gulf. That's like going from a candle to a light bulb. Level 1, level 2, level 3 are all non-cognitive chatbots. And the moment you get to level 4 and level 5, that's where the cognition comes into play. And the moment you talk about cognition, this is where you're talking about interactive learning. We're talking about having memory, short-term, long-term memory. Everything that you're learning during this session is part of AIGO's short-term memory. And everything that has happened so far in any of our previous sessions that AIGO has learned is part of AIGO's long-term memory.
So how much of this should I watch? Yeah, okay.
To be able to dynamically, change the conversation from one topic to the other topic. These are all the capabilities that come at level 4, and you need to be on the cognitive side. You need to have the cognitive assistant. Again, to the best of our knowledge, AIGO is the only, a chatbot that is cognitive.
Okay.
Having said that, we are still at level 4. We are not at level 5. So as an example, metacognition, I know what I am thinking. I can guess what you're thinking. I may be right. I may be wrong. I can take a guess. So AIGO doesn't have that level of awareness yet. But that is something that we can, certainly teach AIGO to get to that level, because autonomous learning and metacognition are not AIGO's capabilities today. John, would you mind putting yourself on mute?
Thank you. Is it John that's open mic? I see three people. I see John, Greg, and William or Bill. You guys are all unmuted. Would you please kindly mute yourself? We're picking up your background noise.
Thank you. Yeah. So what does this mean, within the context of human capital management? What we are hearing and what we are seeing from all of the thought leaders in this space, whether it's Gartner, IDC, and a number of individuals, is as we move into the future, and that future seems to have expedited because of COVID, looks like the user experiences or the employee experience are going to be critical, because the user in this case is an employee, and these are all the areas that are being massively transformed right now, whether it is administrative HR, whether it is talent management or service management or workforce management, and here are the outcomes that we are looking at. What this translates to, in our world is, at the end of the day, we try to break this down. What are some of the compelling use cases that where AIGO can be used within the context of human capital management? And this is what we were able to come up with. So number one, it's how about having a personalized HR assistant for every employee? We were working with one of the railroad company with 15,000 employees, and they have few hundred people working in their HR. And what they said is, ever since the COVID-19 hit, their HR team is getting bombarded with calls from all their employees. And now they're in discussions with us to create a hyper-personalized HR assistant for every employee. So we teach AIGO, company policies, procedures, and everything to do with your employee handbook. We teach AIGO that. And we also get AIGO connected with the 401k plans and all of that. We need to do that once. Once we do that, now we can release AIGO to the world, to all these 15,000 employees. Now they have a hyper-personalized HR assistant that's available for them 24/7, anywhere, anytime, on any device. Now you can ask questions of, what does my 401k plan look like? How many sick days I have? What's my company policy on a particular thing? Whether it is onboarding a new employee, whether it is benefits management, or payroll, or time and scheduling, screening new candidates, succession planning. These are all the areas where you can have a digital assistant that is working with you and working for you, that is hyper-personalized based on your usage and your needs and your role within the company. So these are the first one is the personalized HR assistant. The second one is advanced assistant, where some of the people that are working in the organization, they need a lot more of a deeper capability. That's what that section is. And the top left-hand side, what you have is a co-pilot for HR applications. So whether you're using analytics, whether you're using Zenefits or any kind of HCM apps, what if you have a co-pilot for your application where you can get things done just by talking to it? You can ask AIGO, hey, can you run the same report you ran for me last week? Now AIGO would come back and tell, I have two reports. You ran one for California, one for Nevada. Which one do you want me to run? Or run the one for California. Also run this every Monday morning at 8 o'clock and copy my boss on it, and schedule a meeting with my boss at 8:30 a.m. You just say that once, and AIGO remembers that, AIGO learns that, AIGO will act on it, AIGO will schedule that for you. So it's like having a personalized HR assistant for whatever domain that you're working with, whether it is recruitment or onboarding or even using an application. That is where AIGO comes into play, and AIGO gets hyper personalized to you. The more you use it, the more useful it becomes for you. Now, how are we able to do this? And when we say we are light years ahead of anyone else, what does that mean? And if you look at the chatbots that exist in the marketplace today, they're really, really good at intent categorization all the way to flowchart logic. Even though the way they go about it is still not right, which is when you say blah 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 umbrella, it's still open to weather application. For all you may be looking for, can I buy a red umbrella or something? Or if you tell Alexa, don't tell me weather, it still gives you weather. But it gives you weather when you ask it, for the weather. So the intent categorization can go only so far, but at least that is something that it can do. But if you go past beyond the flowchart logic to say, is there shared context? Is there a conversational memory? Does it have ability to disambiguate? Can it learn new information interactively? Can I change the topic dynamically from one context to other context? Now, that is where it falls apart. None of the chatbots are even remotely capable of having any of those cognitive skills. This is where AIGO excels. Just to put this in perspective in terms of in some way to it. Let's say if there is an IQ for a chatbot, we believe Alexa, Siri, Cortana, IBM Watson, all of these companies, they're at 10 right now. We believe AIGO either 30. And we have cracked the code at the architecture level. So we know how to move the needle from 30 to 40 to 50, all the way to human level, assuming humans are at 100. And this is where, and if you look at AIGO, it's not by, and I don't want to give impression as if AIGO is at human level. It's not. That's why we use the phrase human-like cognition. It's not at human level. Like we talked about metacognition, abstract reasoning, or concept formation. Those are the things that are not in AIGO's realm yet. But we know what we need to do to keep moving the needle towards that. Right. So the difference between existing chatbots and AIGO is really between like a chalk and a cheese, or a candle and a light bulb. We believe you really need light bulb to light the world. You could have all kinds of beautiful candles, bigger candles, which is what everyone else is working on. So the moment you're talking about the chatbots that do not have any brain, you are dealing with massive volumes of data, and they talk about being able to train the system. They use the word train, and remember we teach the system, fundamentally different approach. Everything that the training data that has to be not only large, it has to be labeled or manually tagged before you can make it meaningful. And in terms of the comprehension, understanding, it's very shallow, and it is statistical in nature. What most people meant when they use the word weather. That's why it's giving you weather, even though when you said, don't tell me weather, because when most people use weather in a sentence, they wanted weather. So I'm going to assume that you want weather, even though I just said, don't tell me weather. So if that is how we are having conversation right now, in less than 2 minutes, pretty much you would say, Srini, we are not having any discussion. If I keep responding to you, what most people meant when they use the same word that you use, that's not. You can never have a meaningful conversation using that kind of approach. But that's how they're going about it. I don't want to cover everything, but one thing that our customers point to us is scrutability. So whenever something doesn't work or works incorrectly, the response that the chatbot companies have is always, we just need to train it with more data. And it's a black box system. They don't know why. They just want to train it with more data, and hopefully there is no catastrophic forgetting. And that happens usually. So when it comes to AIGO, when you work with AIGO, you have access to AIGO's brain. It is fully scrutable. So if AIGO responds to something incorrectly, or if AIGO does not know the answer, you can look into AIGO's brain and you can figure out pretty quickly where something went wrong. Did we miss a fact, or is there a connection that is missing? Whatever it is, as soon as you fix that, AIGO starts working. So it is fully scrutable, and our customers appreciate that a lot. And a lot of proprietary information is there in AIGO's brain once we deliver this for you. Let me cover a few more slides and then go over. So how are we able to do this? So AIGO is not a statistical system. AIGO is not a deterministic system, which is, it's not a rule-based system. So how are we able to do this? So what AIGO is it's an evidence-based hypothesis. What we mean by that is, we created AIGO's brain. This is what we refer to as integrated cognitive architecture that works more like how human mind works. So when we see something new, when we hear something new, we are trying to make sense of it. What do I know about this person? What do I know about the topic this person is talking about? You're basically fighting on all your cylinders in your head, and basically trying to make sense of it. Whatever does not make sense, you ask additional questions to disambiguate. Only then you would assimilate this new information into your existing knowledge, be able to speak intelligently about the new information that you have just learned. That is exactly how we have designed AIGO's brain, or AIGO's brain. That's exactly how it works. So what you're seeing in here is, I refer to as the faculties of AIGO's brain. There, all the circles you are seeing, there's the learning module, there's the parsing module, there's memory, short-term, long-term memory, inference. All of these things are highly integrated. In fact, these are all homegrown. This is our proprietary software. The parsing engine, as an example, it goes almost 10 to 15 levels deeper than Stanford parser. Not only that, is parsing a sentence, it actually has access to short-term, long-term memory and the inference engine. I'll give you an example. If you say something like, Bob is not coming along to AIGO, here is what, you say this to any other chatbot, Alexa, Siri, any of them, immediately their response is, I'm sorry, I don't know how to help you with that. You say that same thing to AIGO. Here is what AIGO does. AIGO looks at its short-term memory and says, did we discuss about any Bob during this session? That's the short-term memory. It is looking for a Bob. And then the second question AIGO asks is, did we discuss about any Bob in any of our prior sessions? So AIGO is looking at the long-term memory to see, are there Bobs that we talked about? And because we said Bob is not coming along, the inference engine kicks in. That means we are going somewhere. It draws that inference, and it is looking at all the different places to see, are we going somewhere? And then it concludes, oh, Bob, the family dog, is not coming along to the picnic we are going this weekend. Let's say if it finds two Bobs that match the criteria, it'll come back and ask you, did you mean Bob A? Did you mean Bob B? So this is what we mean by evidence-based hypothesis. So throughout from the time you say your sentence, whether it is short utterance or medium utterance or long utterance, AIGO is processing that throughout its faculties, trying to draw gather the evidence and form a hypothesis. Either it will conclude the hypothesis, or it will come back and ask you additional questions to disambiguate before it concludes an hypothesis. And because this has to happen so fast, what it is it's a purpose-built knowledge graph. I'm getting a little bit into the technology side, but it is important to know. Technically, how are we able to do this? It's a purpose-built knowledge graph that is 100 times faster than any commercially available graph database. So every user gets their own AIGO, and each AIGO comes to you with these three layers. There's the red circle, there's the blue circle, and then there is the green circle. And think of it, these are logical separations. So the red circle is where AIGO has its general knowledge about people, places, things, concepts, relationships, photosynthesis, gravity. All of these concepts are part of AIGO's core. In addition to that, AIGO also has cognitive skills that are part of the red core: ability to understand, ability to disambiguate, ability to have short-term, long-term memory, ability to adapt. All these things are part of AIGO's red core. So you'd be surprised to know that 70%, over 70% of our resources are either linguists or cognitive psychologists. Usually people are shocked and surprised to hear that. We don't have a machine learning expert. We don't have a deep learning expert. We don't have a data scientist, and that is by design. They're constantly teaching AIGO the general knowledge and kind of improving the cognitive skill. Think of the red core as if you're hiring the smartest intern off the street. They're very good in their general knowledge and cognitive skills, but they don't know much about your business. That is where the blue circle comes into play. And within the blue circle, that is specific to that customer, to that enterprise customer that we are working with. And this is where we teach AIGO again, customer-specific ontology. So what are the terms and terminology that you use in your business and the context of that? We teach that. And number two, we also build APIs. Any number of, AIGO we can integrate AIGO, interface AIGO with any number of your systems, whether the ERP systems or even file systems or even expert systems, like a predictive tools or recommendation tool. We can integrate AIGO with any number of systems. That happens in the blue layer. Also, we teach AIGO additional common sense knowledge about your business to be able to properly interpret what your user is saying. As an example, even though you and I know how to speak English or read English language, but how we interpret a legal agreement is different from how an attorney would interpret it because they have that additional background knowledge. So we teach that to AIGO. It typically takes us 6 to 8 weeks to teach AIGO this, and once we are done with it, we move on to the green layer. In the green layer, we literally didn't have to do anything at all. If this user has been an existing user with history, we load their historical usage, whatever their products purchased or the kind of questions they asked. If there is a history, we can load that one time into the green layer, and then we release AIGO to the world. And each user gets their own green layer. So that is how we are able to offer hyper personalization. So how you use it is different. Literally, if you and I are using Salesforce as an example, you can talk to AIGO and say, hey, AIGO, can you give me Timbuktu? AIGO says, I don't know what Timbuktu is. You can say, oh, I refer to my weekly sales pipeline report as Timbuktu. Now you say, give me Timbuktu. It gives you a weekly sales pipeline report. Now that has no impact on how I'm using it because I have my own green layer. I'm not using yours. So this is how we are able to do this. And the red core is the same core across all customers of AIGO. So whether we go to healthcare, whether we go to e-commerce, whether we go to insurtech or fintech, the red core is exactly the same across the board. What is one of the biggest differentiator here that our customers tend to appreciate is this. So we are now working with one of the largest banks in the country. What they said is, look, Srini, we started on this journey 3.5 years back. And now we ended up with 14 bots and 15 problems. I said, what do you mean? Well, anytime we wanted a bot company created a bot. And now we have 14 bots. And these 14 bots are 14 siloed bots that do not talk to each other. There is no shared context. There is no shared memory, anything like that. So anytime I have a business rule update, I have to go to 14 different places to update. But 15th problem is even bigger, which is the lack of adoption by the users, because my auto loan bot does not know anything about the home loan bot that the same customer is also with us on the home loan side, and the home loan bot does not know anything that the customer is using our savings and checking account. So this creates a lot of mistrust, and they wanted to know, what did they miss? I said, there are two things that you missed. Number one, you have a chatbot with no cognition. Therein, your adoption is getting killed. In fact, what they said is, out of 66 million retail customers they have for their bank, less than 100,000 of them are using it. And this is after 200 people working full-time on the chatbots within their company, and after them spending tens of millions of dollars over a period of 3.5 years. So that's number one. You need to have that cognitive chatbot. And number two is their architecture is not designed to have a brain. So when you work with us, what happens is we are not delivering multiple siloed chatbots. What we are delivering is the one corporate brain. Let's say for the first use case, we build those ontologies that we talked about and the APIs and also the common sense knowledge. Once we teach that and we get this up and running, for the second use case, if you need the same ontologies and same APIs or even same background knowledge, you don't need to do anything. In few hours, you can get the second use case up and running. If the second use case needs additional ontologies, now you add on top of that. But at the end of the day, you are building one corporate brain that continues to learn, evolve, and grow. And every use case that you want, whether it is internal facing or external facing, is derived from that brain. It's using that information from that brain. So any kind of updates you have, you just update your corporate brain once, and that's all you need to do. And AIGO is ready to go across the board with all the use cases. So this is also a powerful way of addressing it, because we have a chatbot with the brain. What we end up delivering for each customer is a cognitive brain or a corporate brain that continues to learn and evolve. That's one of the biggest differentiators. So I do want to take some time to talk about my business partner, and then I'm going to wrap it up. So this technology has been in the works for almost 23 years. Peter Watts is my business partner. And I look at Peter as Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, and I say that with utmost humility. And the reason being, he's a high school dropout who never went back to school, but he started his first software company in his early 20s. He took that company from zero to IPO in 7 years. And he ran that company for a few more years. After that, when he sold that company, he had enough time and money in his hands that he wanted to focus on the next big challenge. And that happened to be intelligence. What is intelligence? How different is human human intelligence from animal intelligence. How do kids learn? The theory of mind, epistemology, cognitive psychology. He combined all of that. He did that for 5 years, and in 2001, he basically coined the term artificial general intelligence (AGI) to literally take AI back to its original vision. When you hear the term AI right now, it essentially is a narrow AI. So in other words, they're looking at a particular problem, they're collecting a lot of data about the problem, they're looking at the patterns within this data, and they're trying to see if we can solve the problem to a certain extent, to the extent that they can monetize it. That has become the definition of AI, very narrow focus. So Peter wanted to take it back to its original vision, essentially creating a machine that can think and reason and learn like a human. So that's why he created that term AGI to differentiate that, and he published a book on it. And to the best of our knowledge, he's the only one who actually created a commercial product based on AGI principles, and that company is called Smart Action. This is the first generation of AIGO. So many Fortune 500 companies use this technology. Millions of customers are using it. As an example, if you're ever in Bellagio Hotel, after you check in, you get a text message from AIGO. From there on, AIGO becomes your hotel concierge. Whether you need an additional pillow, additional bed, a ticket to home and group, AIGO will take care of it. So Peter started this in 2008. In 2018, both Gartner and Frost & Sullivan recognized Smart Action as the leader in the category of AI-enhanced self-service product category, beating companies like IBM Watson and many others. This was in the hosted call center space. What Peter did in 2013 is he hired a management team to run Smart Action, and he started AIGO.ai for two reasons. One, he wanted to take the technology that's working really well in the hosted call center space to take it beyond the hosted call center domain to any domain to solve the problem of intelligence. That's number one. And number two, he wanted to convert the technology into platform. So last 6 years, we have been in stealth mode, really cranking up the IQ, and Peter hired 11 more. So 12 people have been working full-time. Peter invested a lot of his personal money into the technology, and we got out of stealth mode late last year with an increased IQ. So we ended up signing up a very large customer, one of the largest e-commerce company, largest insurance company, largest banks, and pretty much every customer we are talking to within the first 3 meetings, they come back and they want to work with us because there is no alternative right now. We believe we have at least 3 years ahead of anyone else in the market. It could be as much as 5 years because there are a lot of problems, that are unique and very difficult to solve that we've been working on over the years. So at the end of the day, this is what we deliver: highly intelligent, hyper-personalized conversational assistants at scale for the enterprise, better than anyone else. Thank you. I'm happy to take on any questions you have.
Srini, I have to say this is a phenomenal presentation. I want to personally thank you. It's raised questions I have, but let me defer to those in the audience. I get a chance to talk to you all the time. So anyone have any questions particularly for Srini? I was looking in the chat bot and I didn't see anything coming up, so I think we're good. Well, if we have, sometimes we have a shy crowd, I'll get them started here. So Srini, very quickly, you'd mentioned, certainly the voice activation of interacting with AIGO is very good, but you also said that it can deal with text. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct. Actually, text is a lot more natural and organic. With text, we don't have to do anything. That's the organic way, natural way to communicate with AIGO. But the moment you want voice, one of the first questions we ask our customers is, do you have a speech recognition system? There's so many of them. There's Nuance, there is, Amazon offers it, Microsoft offers it, Apple offers it. There are many of these companies, and there are many other. There are 50 plus companies in this space. So we ask them, do you have a preference? Do you have something that you're already using? If they are not, we'll recommend one of the existing ones. If they do have it, we'll just integrate it. It's a very simple task for us to integrate with any existing speech recognition. Having said that, in Smart Action, we created our own speech recognition. So within our roadmap, we do envision within the next 2 to 3 years to have our own speech recognition. And the difference is this: today's the speech recognition systems don't have a brain. So it really goes by phonetics. If we're working with one of the largest e-commerce gifting companies right now, and if you say flowers and chocolates, and if you are in a quiet environment, it understands what you're saying. But if you are
Can I ask a question about the speech recognition? We're talking about human resources. There's a lot of confidential information. How would you be able to guarantee if I was to be talking to this, that it's me asking about my own personal information and not somebody else? How would you foresee it? Does it understand that it's me and not Nova's talking? So if I'm asking about my salary or my health information, how would that tie in?
Right. So there is a level of authentication that we go through. We're doing that right now already with our customers. Now, for the voice, the speaker recognition is what you are asking with. We don't have that technology. So we authenticate you based on your user ID, password, phone number, whatever it is. We're doing this with banks right now. We're working with a couple of largest banks. But once you authenticate, we trust that's you. Whether you're using it through phone or not. So there is authentication that goes on, and this authentication is more your, whatever normal authentication that you go through, with the bank, whether it is, a mom's maiden name or first car, whatever it is, we go through all of that, but we don't have the speaker recognition.
Do you do that through voice or through a device?
We're doing it both through talk or text.
Okay, so you just have, if it's through talk, I'm just thinking of confidentiality and overhearing.
Good question. That's our HR professionals out there for you.
And Srini, this is Scott. Based on that last comment, I'm taking it, you can choose how you authenticate, meaning maybe it's an employee ID as part of the authentication process. Once you're authenticated, the application security can take that into account, right? And provide application security within AIGO.
Correct. That's exactly right, Scott. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. However many number of levels of security that you want us to go through, AIGO will authenticate all of that and go from there. Yeah. Okay. So we have flexibility there. Yeah.
So you have two questions out here, Srini. I'm going to ask what I think to be the more simple one, because I love the question that's been asked by Dave. But so Victor had asked, compliments on your leading technology. How long does it take to implement AIGO in an organization?
Yeah,
what are the
great
factors?
question. Yeah, absolutely. So typically, in about 6 to 8 weeks, we can give you something that you can test. And you probably need 2 to 4 weeks to test it thoroughly before you can move that into production. So it's 2 to 3 months, right? That assumes that you have the APIs ready. If you're still using mainframes or anything like that, that will be harder to get. If you have REST APIs available for AIGO to interact with your systems and all of that, that makes it easier and faster. That's number one. And number two is we also request to give us a dozen to 2 dozen sample conversations that you would expect the users to have. That gives us pretty good understanding in terms of the kind of complexity of the background knowledge that AIGO needs to have to be able to correctly understand and intelligently respond. So those are the kind of inputs that we need from you. And once we have that, we're off to races. In about 6 to 8 weeks, we can get it done.
Good deal. So David asked a question, and this is the one I hesitated a little bit because I think there's a lot of thought that needs to go through this process. But Dave has asked basically the following. It says, can AIGO reduce manual labor-intensive hours during the recruiting process? And really, over to that perspective, he's saying, is there a way to empower the recruiters and the prospective candidates during the recruiting process? So you may have an example or a use case. It's one I would love to hear that if you do later encounter, come back to us. We'll publish it out for the group. But I'm curious, do you have anything off the top of your head?
Sure. It really depends on, we need to understand what processes are involved, what kind of decisions that are being made, And if you remove human from the picture, is there a system that can help us with that decision? I'll give you an example, right? Right now we are building an assistant for Salesforce application. And salespeople are notorious for not entering data into CRM, so we are doing that. So you have a 24/7 assistant that can help you throughout your sales cycles. Now, what AIGO cannot do is, if you ask AIGO what is the next best product to position at what price point, maybe they were, the salesperson was smart enough to figure that out based on their historical conversations or something else. But AIGO is not, right? Because what we are good at is only one thing, which is we fully, thoroughly understand conversation better than anyone else. And we can remember, we can remind you all of that stuff. But we are not a predictive tool. We are not a recommendation tool. So what we did in this particular case is we integrated AIGO with Einstein, which happens to be Salesforce's predictive tool. Now, in real time, AIGO would go to Einstein and say, hey, what is the next best product position for this customer? Because AIGO understands who the customer is, who the rep is, all of that. It passes that information and let Einstein crunch the data and then it gives the response to us, and we'll come back to you and say, hey, no, you want to push the product B at $400,000. That is the next best product position. And we are able to do this in a split second. So it is seamless for the end user. As far as the end user is concerned, all they're doing is they're interacting with AIGO to talk or text, and let AIGO go and do the work with any number of systems that it has to work with to bring back the right answer for you. So that's how we're able to handle that. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. I'll test it a little bit by asking a more. Again, AIGO is not the robot process automation tool. It is not going to take away manual processes and take the human out and just do it automatically. But it strikes me that, let's say I have policies that demand that both candidates get back within certain timeframes, and even more so, hiring managers get back to the recruiter in certain timeframes. Can I simply speak to AIGO and say, remember to have Dave call the candidate in the next 2 days? And
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking along the lines of that, the enforcement of the processes and maybe the policies, or at least culturally, what you're trying to do could be done perhaps better and more efficiently through AIGO, as opposed to letting the manual process be automated or something like that.
Right. Yeah, literally, what you said is exactly right. You can literally talk to AIGO and dictate a rule. For those of you who are interested, I'm happy to take you through a live demo of AIGO, so you get a better sense, and then you'd appreciate it. So what Dave asked is exactly right. So just by talking to AIGO, just by telling AIGO will learn that, understand that, and actually implement that as a rule going forward. We can actually show that to you in action.
And might very well.
No, I could see this really working well with the leave process. Here I am. I'm thinking about going on a family leave, pregnancy.
Yes.
But I don't know anything about it, and what's, because in every state's different. That knowledge could be there, and it could be a very nice conversation around
exactly.
that.
No, that's a very good point. So you've just given me an idea that I will call you back with maybe as taking us through a live demo, because we will run out of time. Are there other? I do have a couple questions, and maybe that'll generate a couple of very good perspectives. Model? Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Great question. So the business model is, right now we are charging a one-time fee to build the blue layer, and if you remember the 3 circles we have. So we are charging for that. That's a professional services fee. That's a one-time fee, and we don't envision taking that on within the next year and a half, because initially, because we just got out of stealth mode and we are still doing that. In about 9 to 12 months, we should have our own platform where we hand over our platform to the customer so they can do the subsequent use cases by themselves, or we can connect you to an implementation partner who can do the customization of AIGO, which is essentially building the blue layer. But for the initial 1 to 3 use cases, we will handhold you. We will actually do this for you, give you the white glove treatment and all that. Now the real model for us in terms of how we generate revenue is, as you move AIGO into production, that is where we charge customers based on a number of users per user per year, and then also based on the usage. how often they're using it, all of this stuff. So this is what comes into play. That's how we charge. How much we charge really depends on the use case and number of users. And we try to get some numbers from you. We don't have a kind of standard number, simple number. It is very custom pricing in terms of how much we charge. But everyone we charge based on number of users, per seat, per year, and then the usage. Does that help you then?
It does. Maybe we can talk more offline, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions there. But thank you. I get.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you two questions, Srini, if there are no
Mhm.
other ones, real quickly. Just two things to kind of sit in my head. So it strikes me that AIGO could play a very significant role in terms of standardization of things like cultural or even company or policy-based terminology. And I say that because I have run into so many organizations that have got, in finance, we call this piece of paper, blah, 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 but over in sales, they call it this one or what. The standardization
Right.
of the terminology and what I'm asking for, in other words, if Nov asks for a going away form and somebody else calls it a leave form or a PTO form, it will remember that all these people personalized are asking these, but they're asking for the same thing. And
Right.
so that, I think it kind of, in a sense, can and easily could create the cultural terminology that we need to start using and start asking for or recognizing that. It probably has a greater part of the onboarding perspective. It calls it the same thing every time, which is really nice. But the big question I have for you, and I don't know that it's one that you wish to answer or could answer right this moment, but as you were talking about where you're going, the different levels, and you had the human sitting above all the different aspects of what you offer, what is it going to take for AIGO to get to that human level? I mean, that's a big question, but I'm curious what your roadmap is looking at about it. What can we as the population in helping to adopt and use AIGO help and accelerate that?
Yeah, then that's a very important question. It's part of our core vision, actually. So, when everyone else talks about this, any kind of human level, cognition, they talk about it at least 30 years away, 50 years away. So we believe we're going to be more around 7 to 10 years. That's number one. What it takes for us to get there is, growing AIGO, the red core that you are seeing here. This is where we really need to, increase and improve the IQ of AIGO to have all those capabilities, like autonomous learning. But basically, if AIGO doesn't know something, AIGO need to be able to go and look out on the internet and identify which site is actually more reliable for that kind of information. Learn that. Let's say you're going to Spain. You want to know kind of what are the top 10 things that I can learn in Spanish so I can kind of enjoy my vacation there. Now AIGO says, if you ask AIGO that and AIGO doesn't know that right now, AIGO says, let me circle back with you in a couple of hours, whatever it is. Now AIGO need to go, AIGO need to learn, come back and actually teach you. So those are the kind of capabilities, that if you had an assistant that can do that, human assistant, those are the kind of capabilities. We are not there. So we believe with enough funding and the experiences that we are going to go through, this is the reason why we are not going to consumer market right now. We are going after the enterprise businesses only. In about 3 to 5 years, we see ourselves getting into the consumer market. And as and when we get there, our vision for consumers is, today you have all of these assistants, the Alexa, Siri, and all that stuff. So they don't have, your agenda. They have their agenda. Like Alexa will never tell you, hey, no, the product that you're looking for is actually on sale at Walmart. It will never say that. Siri will never tell you you should be buying, Android. So they have their own agenda. They either want to collect your data, they want to sell more of their products and their services. So we envision a day where you will have your own assistant that is hyper-personalized to you. It has your agenda, your goals, your needs. And it will then deal with all of these other chatbots. It will do the searching for you. It will do the shopping for you. But it has your agenda. It knows what you're looking for, what kind of budgets you have, what kind of things you're looking for, what you like, what you don't like, all of this stuff. It has your agenda. Let it deal with it. We call it a personal assistant. We use the word personal twice. It's actually personal as in it is personalized to you. It is private to you. and it continues to learn and adapt to your needs and to your goals. So that's what we envision as we move into the future. That's the consumer market.
So I have another question out there, and I think it's one I would love to have asked myself. So is there an ideal number of employees in a company that should be considering using AIGO, or is it no limitation, if you will? Probably on the downside. Most of the time you can scale upwards, but it's the downside that's the smaller. Is there a magic number?
There is no magic number. We just need to see, what kind of problem are we solving? Is it a critical problem? Is it valuable enough for us to generate the kind of revenue that we want to generate, and also to get the kind of support we need to get from the customer that they're willing to pay? So it's really, we need to look at that and say, is it few hundreds or is it few thousands? We really need to look at it and say, okay, it is big enough problem to solve. So it's a case-by-case basis. We don't have a number.
Great. Well, I see us right up on the hour and then some. Let everybody, I know that we all think we're not busy, but I have yet to find somebody who's not really, really busy. So I'll let the crowd go. Srini, I have to say thank you. This was most entertaining. I guarantee you, folks, we will be bringing AIGO and Srini back. We'll have a live demo, lots of time for questions. I'm going to hold on to the questions I've got here that weren't asked yet. And from the perspective of just, there's something sitting right here that I'll just ask you, but we'll have to wait for the next one. And that is, has AIGO approached the biotechs? This came from Dave, basically saying, we do a lot of paper-based experiments, and this could be utilized to move to more digital solutions, as well as track real-time inventory. It's COVID related, if you will, but I mean, it's a long-term perspective. You could reach out to Dave directly, or Dave, if you want to reach out to Srini, I'll get you the information. If you've got a contact out there would like to maybe have a conversation, it'd be wonderful.
Yeah, great. No, we have not reached out to biotech. My email is literally Srini, SRINI, @aigo.ai.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone, thank you very, very much. Srini, thank you very much, and thank you for recording this. I guarantee you I'm going to be pushing this out the door for those that managed to miss this session. So again, thank you, and we'll have you back for sure. Absolutely.
Great. Thanks now for the opportunity. Thanks everyone for your time.
My pleasure.
Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Stay well.